And yeah, every day something new.
Yeah. Trying new, stretching yourself.
That's our weekly tornado siren at 10 a.m. on Tuesday.
Okay. Okay, then let's start. Good evening, everyone. We have very rainy day here today in Yerevan. And it seems the same as we on John's place, right? You have rain too.
Yeah, rain and cold.
Yeah. But we will do our best to cheer you up. And just because we have an exceptional guest today, ladies and gentlemen, it's quite noisy.
Sorry, it should be done. It's our weekly tornado siren at 10 a.m. So it takes like 30 seconds.
30 seconds. So we need to count 29, 28, 27. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, please meet John Coyle, a person who is a world-leading expert in innovation and design thinking, best-selling author and an Olympic medalist, a person that is very exceptional, and we are really, really very happy to have you as a guest today, John. Thank you for coming and joining us today on Facebook Live. And hello, good morning for you.
Thank you, good morning.
How are you today?
I'm fantastic.
You know, we have like 30 minutes to go through a lot of things, and I have prepared a couple of questions to you. And the first question that I would love to ask you, like, how is the situation at your place, how it is going? Because everyone is like passing through these corona things and everyone is surviving differently.
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty standard for me, because if I'm not traveling, I'm home sort of nesting. So this is just a longer nesting period than normal. So a lot of new recipes and getting a lot of time in on my bike. But other than that, mostly pretty normal behavior for me.
I see. And we watch what you do actually, because you are posting whatever you are doing and like getting a bit, you know, nervous of the fun that you are having. We are going to speak about design thinking and about innovation and about leadership. So to spread a light on this topic as much as possible. And actually, we all know that innovation and creativity is something that is really needed in this changing world, when everything is rapidly changing and you have to be like innovative and you have to be creative and you have to come up with new ideas and whatever it is needed for the business and for yourself. But my question will be, how is this related to design thinking? Because people have to put these dots between these two things.
Yeah, so design thinking is just a methodology. It's out of Stanford, but it's a methodology for creative problem solving. When you look at it from a distance, it doesn't seem all that unique, but there's a reason that this is the center point of an entire school at Stanford and multiple different degrees at their D school. And it really comes down to me, is that the skills and capacities to be creative are teachable. And we tend to pretend that, oh, you either have it or you don't, you were born with it or you weren't. And I don't think that's true at all. It's a skill like anything else. And there are steps to the skill. And so those are the 5 or 6 steps of design thinking. But there's a mindset too. And that's the part that sort of sits underneath, is changing your way of thinking about problem solving so that you can find those new answers, new way of thinking, new ways of solving old problems. And that's really what design thinking does.
So you can teach someone to be innovative?
For sure, absolutely.
Okay. So the myth that whether you are or not creative personality is something that we are working with, right?
Right. And, you know, some people are going to be more creative than others. I won't pretend that that's not true, but everyone has the capacity to improve their ability to think creatively. And the design thinking methodology has 5 steps, at least the way that David Kelley, the founder and namer of it, uses, and that's what I use as well. The first is you have to accept you have a problem. That sounds obvious, but we all know people that are not willing to accept the problem right in front of them. The second is to define it. Do we really understand what it is? And that's not necessarily easy. Sometimes there's an easy definition around a problem that's not the right one. And we'll come back to that later, I'm sure. But making sure you understand it. Third is the piece that most problem-solving mechanisms miss, which is empathy. Do you understand the problem from the shoes of the person you're solving for? If it's a customer, if it's a client, if it's a prospect, are you in their shoes? Because otherwise you're solving your problem, not theirs. And then only then do you get to finally generate ideas, and doing so without judgment. And there's a whole methodology around ideating. And then finally you test, prototype, and then repeat. It's always iterative. You're always coming back to, wait, do we really understand the problem? Oh, wait, do I really understand how this person feels about this situation? Oh, wait, are these the right set of ideas? Did they really solve the problem? And so forth. And so that's design thinking in 5 steps and in about a minute and a half.
So we have steps and we learn these steps. And when we pass these steps, we are becoming innovative.
You are becoming more innovative if you follow these steps, if you also have the designer's mindset. And so this is the part that sits underneath. And the designer's mindset is a really interesting perspective on problem solving. It is very clinical, scientific, detached even from the problem. So what a lot of people tend to do is get emotionally attached to a certain definition of a problem, or even a certain outcome or certain solution. And what you'll see with designers is they don't care. Like, they're always doing this. They're looking at it from different ways. They're not sure that's the right definition. They're not sure they have the right solution. They're very analytical and detached and scientific about defining the problem, getting in the shoes of the person or situation they're trying to solve for, generating ideas, completely detached. And then and only then do they get the other part of it, which they call human-centered design. Then they get emotionally attached to really trying to make something work. The problem with most people is they get very emotionally attached early on. They call it confirmation bias to a certain set of definition and problem solution, and then they don't see the other possibilities. And so that's what the designer's mindset teaches you, is how to back up, look at things from a different direction, find new ways to solve that, and then getting very passionate about generating solutions that can lead to new outcomes for whatever the situation is.
Okay, then I have a question. How long it will take to pass all these steps and have the new mindset? And like, I do understand that everyone has his own learning curve,
right,
and everyone is passing his own stages in learning. But in average, according to your observations, how long it usually takes to change the mindset?
Well, it's an interesting question. It does come down to, like everything, behaviors are only reset with practice, right? But what I can say is, when people learn the process and practice and the mindset, they start to reset their trajectory for problem solving. So maybe they were this good, and then they learn this, and then the next time they're this good. And if with repeat, if they do it again the next time, over time, they get much better with repeat of solving problems using this methodology than if they don't. And so, yeah, the first time out, are they 100 times better? Of course not. But they might be 10%. And that 10% over time can lead itself to, with iteration, to becoming a lot better at solving problems. And it never ends. You know, I teach this and I still catch myself saying, oh, wait, why are we expecting that this is the problem? Maybe that's not the problem. Maybe the problem is this over here. And it happens all the time with clients. You know, I'll tell you one quick example. A client of mine, this was before I worked with them, but they were in the airline business. And you know, when you go to the airport and you check in, this was a number of years ago, before online check-in was the usual way of doing business, you would go up to the counter and then they would type, right? And you're like, well, typing, why is this taking so long? It's like my name and my passport number, that's all that they should need. And so they did some consumer research, and they found from their research that people thought check-in took too long. And so they decided to solve that problem. Now they accepted that problem because it seemed obvious. Because it turned out that wasn't the problem. So they put in a $60 million new system, trained everybody up on it, cost a year and all kinds of investment money. And then they tested the new solution, which took half the time to check in, and people were less satisfied. And so like, well, wait, why? We solved the problem, right? And so then they did interviews and they did research, and they found that in the process of shortening the typing, the customer service person no longer made eye contact. And so they felt less human even than before. So they solved the wrong problem. And so that's a great example of how design thinking is really important, being the shoes of the person you're solving for, making sure you truly understand it, because you can waste a lot of energy solving the wrong definition of a particular challenge.
Yeah, really. I want to tell our auditorium that it's a rare and unique chance to ask questions directly to John. So you can use, you can write in comments in our Facebook Live, and I have already the first question to ask to you, John. Does your class engage people in a special way to get better faster?
Yes. So often when I'm doing a workshop, you know, I sometimes just do keynotes, but when I'm doing a workshop, one of the things that we always do is we do a pair, so 2 ideation sessions. And I always do 2 because of the following. I do the first one on a fictitious business problem. Usually around inventing the vacuum of the future. And the reason I do this is because it's really hard for you to solve your own problem because you're very used to the status quo in your situation. There's a phrase in the South of the US, which is, you can't read the label when you're sitting inside the jar. It means it's really hard to see your way out of your current situation. You're too used to it, but you're very good at looking at somebody else's. And so we do the practice one, and they can throw out idea after idea. We'll generate hundreds of ideas in just a few minutes and into the routine of generating ideas without judgment, and then merging those and doing the diverge converge that design thinking is. And then after a break, we go to their real problem, whatever it might be. And because they've got practice and traction of generating ideas without judgment, of being creative, of having fun with it, which is another thing that's actually really important. Humor and creativity are intertwined. And so I always say, and it's true, if you're not laughing, you're probably not doing this right. Because part of that creative process should be, oh, that's a crazy idea, but I'm gonna throw it out anyway. And that gets the juices flowing and gets the creativity going. So that's the way that I help people get traction of knowing how to leverage the design thinking knowledge into practical application. And when people take that back, the one thing I always ask them is, how many ideas do you think we just generated? And I usually give them about 6 or 7 minutes, and I'll do a count. I'll walk around the room, and it's usually somewhere between 20 and 50 ideas per person. So if you've got 20 people in the room, you've got 600 to 800 ideas in 6 minutes. And that seems almost impossible before learning this methodology. But afterwards, it's like, well, of course. I mean, ideas are a dime a dozen. Getting the right one's the hard part. But you can't have a great idea if you don't have a lot of them and throw out the bad ones. So
I have a question. Like, based on your practice, what is the average number of ideas that a person can come up in like 3 minutes?
In 3 minutes, on a problem or situation that they are close to, they will come up with somewhere between 10 and 15, most people. You give them a problem that they're not close to, and they'll come up with 30. It's fascinating. But it's harder to solve your own problem than somebody else. It's sort of like giving relationship advice. You can give it to everybody but yourself.
Okay. So if it goes more than 50, it means that we have someone that is like already used to innovation and creativity, right?
Yeah. People that are used to this practice will generate, you know, dozens of ideas per minute. But people that are not used to it won't, because they don't have the practice, and they're judging their ideas before they come out, which is, of course, one of the mental roadblocks that we need to overcome. You don't judge ideas while you're generating them. You do that afterwards.
Yeah. I have a question in the chat. How can HRs benefit from the course? I think they mean the innovation leadership series that is we are offering in Armenian market, and this is John's course that right now it's affordable and available in Armenia thanks to John and his attitude to Armenian people. So this is the question, how HR people can benefit from the course.
Yeah, so I often get this opportunity to ask one of my favorite questions, which is if I'm talking to somebody in HR or a senior executive, for example, and I'll say, hey, is innovation important to your company? And the answer is always yes, right? Often it's a mission or part of the vision or a value, or it's like etched in the marble of the hallway. And I'll say, oh, that's great. And do you have a leadership development program? I'll ask them that. And for larger companies, the answer is always yes. They're always developing the leaders of tomorrow. And then I'll ask them this. So how are you training your leaders of tomorrow to be innovative? And then there's a pause and there's no answer, because by and large, there is no training to teach the leaders of tomorrow to be innovative. And so there's an expectation that they're going to be innovative and lead innovative teams, and there's no skill development. And that's a huge miss. And all the other parts of leadership development, they're important. I wouldn't say that any of them are not. Giving feedback, analytics, reading data, strategy, all those are great things, important. But if you really want your leaders of tomorrow to be innovative, there are skills and tactics and mindsets that can be taught. And so that's what's inside the course, is simply mechanisms, methodologies, including design thinking, around how to lead creative teams and to be creative yourself. And it's a very teachable thing. The other thing that is great about not just this course, but this sort of entire topic, is people love it. When I get to do workshops, which I do in big companies as a part of their leadership development program, almost always my course gets the highest ratings. And it has much less to do with me than more to do with they got to be creative, they got to have fun, they got to generate ideas, they got to learn how to generate more ideas, their ideas were heard. Like, it's a fun process. And so I love to do it. I think the course actually is super fun itself. There's a lot of storytelling, as you know, RP, and the people have gone through.
I know.
It's fun.
Yes, I need to share with people that I have passed John's. I'm a student of John, and I have really enjoyed all his sessions, and in Uzbekistan, and we did it also recently in Jordan. So it's kind of adventure. Whatever you do, you really feel that you're passing that adventure with the person that have done a lot of in his life and got a lot of achievements, and also knows the topic that he is talking about. We have another question. It's what problem will the course solve for marketers, let's say? Should I, as a marketer, pass the course?
Yeah, it's a great question. And marketing is a really, really essential area for innovation. I mean, it's perhaps the most important, maybe product development. But I would say, particularly when it comes to design thinking and marketing, the thing that I think sometimes happens with marketing is you lose the in the shoes perception of your customers. And I think quantitative research can be also misleading that way. I can remember doing a lot of quantitative studies back when I led marketing. I led marketing for a Fortune 500 telecom here in the US. And we interpreted that data often incorrectly because we didn't really understand what was driving the answers on these quantitative surveys. And so over time, after bringing in more of a design thinking methodology, what we always did after that was we would do not just focus groups, we would actually do observances in people's homes or in a store or watching people using their phones without asking them questions. And by observing, you start to get into the shoes of that customer. And just because, the team was a bunch of professional, multi-degreed people that went to fancy schools doesn't make it obvious that we know how you know, a single mother living downtown in a small town thinks about their phone. Two different groups of people. And so by observing how people use their phones, we really started to get insights into how they were thinking about their phone and some of the latent psychological needs that actually were attached to it, particularly for our service, which were around safety. The phone was really a safety net for a lot of our customers, and playing into the reliability of the network and the safety that provides allowed us to have a much more clear marketing message than before we started using that kind of empathy and methodology using it.
Mm-hmm. I have a question. How you, I mean, you know, at some point you decided to do this course online, right? Because you're having a lot of lectures and traveling around and having all these public talks, etc., etc. How it came to your mind that you have to design and do it like online and via video? Why you decided to do that?
You know, it was really I think it was Monica's idea. But the question we had is, I'm not scalable, right? Like as a person, I can only be in so many places, and I'm certainly seeing you around in different countries around the world, but there's only so many talks I can do per year. And we were really sort of bumping up against the limits of my capacity as a human to travel, to speak, and to be somewhere else the next day and so on. And so this was the way that we decided to solve for the inability for me to scale as a person. And so by putting it online and recording all of the stories and the video segments to keep it still fun and interactive, that was the solution we came up with, and it's been great.
Can you tell, I'm just curious because I do know, but people don't know what and what each stage, like there are modules, I know, so each module, why it is designed in that way and what steps people are going to pass and how it works actually.
Sure. So, you know, there's 7 modules. I won't go through them all, but I'll go through a couple. And the way they're all really set up is similar. There'll be a video introducing the topic. There'll be a worksheet to work through how this might apply to your business, your situation, your challenge. Can you still hear me? Because you're frozen right now. So I'm going to pause for a second.
It seems we lost you for a while.
Okay, are we back yet?
You are back. Okay, so 7 modules, and then it was like John saying nothing.
Yeah, okay. So 7 modules. Each module usually begins with a short video introducing the topic. Then there'll be a story about how that topic applies. Then there's usually a worksheet where you can identify how this might apply to your business, your situation, usually an encapsulation video, and then some summary sheets and worksheets for you to keep reminders and make some action plans for what you'll do different. And so, you know, one of those is around introducing design thinking, telling some stories about using empathy in design and so forth. Another one, which is probably one of my favorites within the course and something that's not widely shared. I don't know why, because I think it's one of the biggest problems facing business right now is this construct. And by the way, this goes all the way through, is there's always a dance between process and mindset, And so this particular mindset that also has a process is the concept of a knower leader versus a learner leader. So this is maybe, I think, segment or module 3. So ignoring the dictionary definitions, a knower leader is the kind of leader that comes in and tells you what to do and doesn't leave you any creative fertile ground to think about things. And their classic line is, "That won't work, we've tried that before." And it comes from a place of good intention, but knower leaders lead by trying to demonstrate their expertise. It's what makes them feel strong. But what they do is they inevitably quell the creativity of the people that work for them. Learner leaders, doesn't mean they don't know, they tend to know more, tend to ask more open-ended questions. And so when somebody throws out a terrible idea or an idea that didn't work before, they'll say, well, wait, have you tested that idea with sales or with marketing or with legal or with whatever the roadblock had been. And by keeping possibility open, learner leaders shift the culture and create innovative teams. Conversely, and this is why I call it innovation kryptonite, knower leaders over time, as they shoot down ideas from the people in their teams. So if somebody new employee comes into the team, they throw out an idea, it gets shot down in the group. Next time they have an idea, they don't do it in group because they don't want to be shot down there. So they bring it to the leader by themselves, the leader shoots them down, and then they stop. They just don't bring ideas anymore. And then everybody eventually shuts down. And then this other terrible thing happens is they quit. Because people, they join companies, but they leave leaders. And they leave leaders. The number one reason that people leave leaders is because my boss is not open to my ideas. And so that module is really about how do I lead innovative teams? How do I not quell the innovative spirit of my team? And instead, how do I bring it out so that we're always generating thought-provoking new ways to solve old problems? So that's an example. And so each module goes into the content, tells some stories, gives you a worksheet, wraps it up, and then gives you a place to action plan for how you might bring this back to your workplace, your office, your business.
Mm-hmm. I have a question. What topics will you cover during the course?
So let's see if I can remember them all.
You have to. It's your course. No problem.
The first module is around a pair of mindsets, a definition of innovation, and then a pair of mindsets around innovation, which are the operator mindset and the creative visionary mindset. And these are two archetypes. Sometimes people really are one or the other. A lot of times people are somewhere in the middle, but the operator are the people that get things done, but they tend to have less ideas than the creative visionaries that have lots of ideas, but also are struggle to get things done. And so this shows how throughout history, there's been a pair of mindsets that are important to innovation, and you need both. And then I get into defining design thinking, walking through the steps, and so forth. So that's the first module. I think the second module is knower versus learner, which we just had talked about.
Mm-hmm.
The third is one of my favorites. It's around resiliency in leading innovation. And so if you lead change, and if you lead change that is innovative, that necessarily means that it's departing from the status quo. It has to be, otherwise it wouldn't be innovation. When you break with status quo, particularly in any business of size, of scale, so medium to large business, the antibodies in the system, the status quo will come out and beat you up, right? People don't like change in general, and there'll be all kinds of problems to face and challenges to deal with. And so this module, resiliency, is around how do I sort of develop psychological resilience to be able to handle the hurdles and the challenges that will be thrown my way. And so it gets into the neuropsychology and neuroscience and psychology of resiliency, and has a three-step process to develop, inoculate yourself for greater stress so that you can not only perform better under greater stress, but learn to like it. I believe the fourth module is around a type of conflict that repeats itself over and over in the workplace. It's called the innovator's triangle versus the drama triangle. And so what happens often in conflict is that certain types of conflict repeat themselves over and over and over and over again. And so, you know, you'll have, like in an office workspace, you'll have marketing blaming legal, who blames the senior executives, and that just goes around the circle. We can't do that because legal won't let us. Legal won't let us because the senior executives are too risk averse. So we can't do this new marketing thing. And so it just never gets solved. And so there's roles that people play in this type of conflict. They're either a persecutor that sort of yell at you, they're a rescuer that sort of saves you but doesn't help you to problem solve, or you're a victim and say, woe is me, oh, there's nothing we can do. And so this module teaches you how to reframe that such that the rescuer becomes a coach, so they push you to solve new ways. The persecutor becomes a challenger, they push you to think differently and they hold you accountable. And the victim becomes an innovator. And instead of saying, woe is me, there's nothing I could do, you say, wait, what is it I can do? What are my options here? What different ways can I solve this old problem in new ways? And so then the worksheet there will be, what opportunities do you have to reframe some dynamics back at your office space, or frankly, with your family. It's an interesting thing about the entire Innovation Leadership series is a lot of the things that I teach in there are as important at home as they are at work, particularly know or learner as well.
Yeah.
And the last module, and I might have missed one, but the last one is around how do I use design thinking to design my life, my career, my enterprise, my business for my strengths, and design around my weaknesses rather than try to fix them. And that tells the story, as you know, RP, of my Olympic career, where I spent many years trying to fix my weaknesses as an athlete, which led me to nowhere. I actually got a lot worse, because when you double down on your weaknesses, you actually get worse. And by stopping that process and designing my athletic career for my strengths, I was able to ultimately break the US record and the world record and move on to take home a silver medal. So that's the capstone of the course. And you know, there's 35 or 36 videos of storytelling, and you know, it's entertaining, but there's value, there's real learning, I promise.
Yes, the boss. I have been there. I do remember. John, we have another question. Once I pass the course, will feel the results straight away, or I need to live with what I have least for a certain period of time, and then in the long time I will see the result? This is the question.
If history serves, what I hear is that, and there's a reason for this, I'll get to it, but is that people will make changes by and large right away. So people will take some of the information, not all of it, but some of the information, and make some changes. And so I'll hear things like, oh, I rejiggered my team and I put people on the team that were doing everything the same way. And I had the people that were really good at some things do that. And I had the people that were really good at other things do that. And we saw results right away. So that's one of the common things that I hear. Another will be, oh, I realize I've been showing up as a knower leader, and I told my team about it, and I told them to help me and to sort of nudge me if I start saying, here's what we should do, or that won't work because, and it's already making a shift. And so the reason I think that this course and the way that I lecture can be effective, even though it's, you know, whatever it is going to be 6 to 8 hours of your time, including introspection, I think is because of the stories that I tell. So what you'll not hear is not just a methodology, which is important, and you'll get it here, but the stories then cement the methodology. And we remember stories. We tend to not to remember facts and data. And so when you have a combination, I think what happens is there's enough memory, working memory, that's emotionally triggered, that when you get yourself into situations similar to one of the stories, you can say, oh, wait, I'm showing up as a knower right now. Oh, wait, this is the drama triangle. Oh, wait, we got to break free from this routinely circling cycle of conflict. And so those triggers that come from the stories, I think, can lead to immediate shifts in behavior and outcomes. And then with practice, you know, once you see success from rejiggering a team to their strengths, or showing up more as a learner leader and getting ideas from your team and seeing how that affects their morale, then it's a really virtuous cycle going forward.
John, I was thinking, why people don't like the change?
That's a really, really good question. Probably one worth a book somewhere. I think, from my experience, it's a fear response, right? So change, especially when it comes to innovation, is necessarily uncertain. You can't know the outcomes, and people work really hard to get really good at what they do so they can be safe. And what goes missing in that process is that the things that lead to growth, the things that lead ultimately to self-actualization, are facing down uncertainties and conquering them. But that takes risk. And some people, a lot of people, don't really like that risk. And they, when confronted with that risk that you're bringing them, right? If you're bringing the CFO or the head of legal some risky new thing, they're instinctively going to put up roadblocks. What if this happened? What if that happened? That's so dangerous. What could that do to our bottom line? What could that do to our future? What could that do to headlines? Like, and so that fear response from uncertainty, I think, is the roadblock to change. But ultimately, and this is the thing that we have to help those people see, is lack of change is death too, right? If you don't change, if you don't innovate, that's its own form of risk. And that risk can outweigh the risk of innovation, and it often does.
Right, right. We have another question. Will you also be sharing storytelling techniques? Your stories are always great.
I actually can't remember if I have a storytelling module in there. Let me think. If Monica's on, she could probably type you to tell you. I do have a storytelling module. I don't recall if we put it in there, to be honest. But if we haven't, we'll make it an add-on. We have a place where we have like bonus material. So if we haven't, I'll put it in as a bonus material.
Okay, it's, you know, it's public promise.
Yes, I know. Not a problem.
Okay,
storytelling is so important. It's so important. You can't exaggerate how important storytelling is in business.
It is definitely. John, can you name the professions that will really gain from your training? Like just a couple of them?
I mean, obviously marketing, HR, I think consultants have really benefited from this program. They get pretty stuck. It's a very stressful sort of work environment they have. Lawyers, I've spoken with lots of lawyers. Actually, probably the most common have been people in the medical profession, particularly nurse leaders and doctors. They are under incredible stress and incredible requirement to keep trying to innovate and deal with change. So a lot of those lawyers, I've spoken with a lot of legal firms, a lot of IT folks too. I mean, I don't know that there is an area of business that I haven't spoken to where it wasn't adaptable to their challenges. Even actuaries. I mean, you think the actuarial sciences might be really boring or routine, but they're not actually.
There are a lot of creativity there.
Yeah.
Right. We have another question. How long does it take to learn to use the tools in the resilience section, the third module?
It's about an hour. It's about an hour long section. It's broken down really into the neuroscience of stress and the stress response and where it comes from, which is the back part of your brain. And then once you understand how that works vis-a-vis your frontal cortex, just 3 simple mechanisms that you can use to develop greater resiliency. And I'll tell you them super quick, which is first, you do have to reduce your stress if you are overstressed. You're not being your best leader, follower, husband, wife, brother, son that you can be. And that's as far as usually people go. They like reduce their stress, take a deep breath, and then take on a big new project and get overstressed again. That's not a long-term strategy. Second step is to learn how to recover better from stress, which most adults don't do properly. And there's a few elements there. And then finally, it's how do I reframe my relationship with stress overall? How do I think about it differently and change my neurochemistry such that I'm actually more creative, more powerful under stress, and learn to like it? And so that's that module. It takes about an hour.
And you have storytelling there too.
Of course. There's the haystack story in that one.
Looking forward to all these stories. John, actually, I was also thinking if you pick like 3 or 4 things that people will gain at the end of the course, what it will be?
Yeah, so I think by and large, people that have gone through my workshops would agree that they will know better how to show up as a leader, to lead creative teams. And that's a big step actually for a lot of people. They get to a place in their careers where they have enough expertise that they get people that follow them, and now they're the leader, and then they inadvertently quell the creativity of their teams, not intentionally, but they do it. And so how to lead creative teams will be one big thing. A second big thing would be, how do I identify cycles of drama and conflict that are totally unproductive, and sort of nip those in the bud and stop those so that doesn't keep you from progress. How to be more resilient under stress and the kinds of stress that come from innovation. And finally, how do I self-identify what my strengths are, what my weaknesses are. They tend to be facets of the same thing. As you know, if you are practical, you're probably critical. If you're direct and honest, you're probably blunt and rude. If you are creative, you're probably disorganized. If you are calm, you're probably unemotional. If you are detail-oriented, you're probably a perfectionist. I could go on and on. So all strengths and weaknesses have facets that come along. And so once you learn what those are, then you can start to design for, how do I design my environment, or my career trajectory to double down on the things I do best, because that's what the world wants from you. It's not to be slightly better at what you're mediocre at, but to be amazing at something you're already great at. So those would be probably 4 things I say you would take away.
Right. And my last question, because I really know that you are very, very busy with lobsters. I'm kidding. I know that you are very busy, and just not to take more of your time, what you will say to our Armenian auditorium, because people are watching you and they know that Armenia now it's available to pass John's course through internet, and what will be your speech?
Well, I've been to Armenia, as you know.
Yes, I know. I know why you were in Armenia.
Yes, for your conference, and of course to adventure. But I got to see a good part of your country and meet a lot of Armenians in your home turf, and I had a fantastic time. And I think that the course, from outside view, right, from the US, didn't know much about Armenia, to be fair. There was a spirit of innovation with the groups that I spoke with that reminded me really of maybe the US, particularly West Coast, like 20 years ago. It's just a lot of energy around possibility. And that's what ultimately I think leads to amazing breakthroughs and successes like we've seen in Silicon Valley, right? And Silicon Valley, by the way, is built on design thinking. That's for sure true.
Don't question that. Yes.
it's endemic at Google. They have their own teams at Apple, Google, Cisco, Amazon, you name it. Design thinking is the core of how they solve problems. So this is a very tested and trusted methodology and mindset. And I'm happy to bring it to Armenia, and hope you enjoy the course if you end up taking it.
And Armenia is happy to host you, unfortunately via platform, but I'm sure the borders will open very soon, and we will have you as a guest very soon physically, and we will show you better places that you have seen before, because we have really fascinating places to visit and to see and to compare, because I know you love traveling and you love hiking and everything. So welcome to Armenia when it is open.
I'll be back.
And yes, please. And thank you very much. And it really was a pleasure to host you. I really feel very honorable to have a talk with you today. And as a reminder to our people in Armenia that are watching us or will watch later, thanks to John and Monica, John's course about innovation leadership development series is now available, and it is affordable, and we have very good price, again thanks to John and Monica. So whatever comes and whatever is coming to Armenia as an option for development and self-development mostly is